I am Iron Man, but I don't know the rest of the words of this song. And on with the review. Sorry, it was the best I could do. Greetings YouTubers and movie fans, and welcome to my first review of the Marvel Cinematic Universe of movies, I suppose. And today we're going to start off with, well, the first movie, because it's a logical move, I think. And that is Iron Man, which was first released, 10 years ago now? 10 years since the first Iron Man film. What the hell? If you asked me, oh yeah, when did it come out? I would have said like 5 years ago, but 10 years ago? That's right, 2008, the first Iron Man film came out, and this film stars Robert Downey Jr. as our title character. And what do I think of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man / Tony Stark? Well, I'll be honest with you, right? And some of you are going to be really shocked with this, but I don't like him. I love him! I got you there. Yeah. If there's someone who can play this character, then I cannot see anyone other than Robert Downey Jr. because he owns this character in this film and all the subsequent films that you can see with him in it. And I've just realised there's a penguin at the bottom of the screen there. You may have just noticed that. Yeah. Don't ask. Basically what this film does is give us an origin story of how Tony Stark became Iron Man. It all starts off straight away in the Middle East. Tony Stark is already by this point a well-known celebrity. He is a very wealthy man. He's got all his father's fortunes and everything like that. You know, everyone loves him. He's sort of like the rich playboy type of character. But then everything goes wrong. There's an explosion while he's in this car in the Middle of East, and then sort of shrapnel goes into his chest, and that is when the hero begins his journey, really. We get a little bit of flashback after that to see all what his lifestyle is like just before we see this disaster happen. So it kind of gives us a feel of how famous he is, how much of a rich playboy he is, all that type of thing, really. So it kind of shows us what his life was like before he took on this Iron Mantle. You see what I did there? Yeah? Yeah, that's a very bad joke. He gets this metal thing on his chest, and that's where he gets all his power from. And in the cave, he meets some guy, and they become really good mates. The baddies tell him to make this weapon using his own manufacturing stuff, because Stark Systems, they make weapons and all of that type of thing. And then the friend who he befriends in the cave gets killed because Tony Stark is like, no, fuck you, I'm not doing that. And what he does instead, he builds some armour, and that is the first official Iron Man suit, Iron Man Mark 1. And by God, that is one of the worst suits, but it's the first one. You could say it is more of a prototype, hence why it is called Mark 1. And it does some pretty cool shit, you know, it's got a flamethrower, all that type of stuff, so all in all, it's very powerful. It does its job. It gets Tony out of the cave because he's been stranded there for what I think is a few months. I think it is mentioned at some point in the film that it is a few months. I don't know, I can't remember. It could have been a few weeks, but it doesn't really matter anyway. He's stranded there for a while. And the suit itself, though, is very clunky. It's very clunky. It's like very large. It kind of reminds me a bit of Ironmonger, which is a little bit of foreshadowing. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this review. After Tony escapes, he arrives back home, safe and sound, and then he's reunited with all of the rest of the film's main cast, such as Gwyneth Paltrow, who plays Pepper Potts. We also have Terrence Howard playing Rhodey. And it would be all the time that he plays this character, because Terrence Howard wanted a little bit of this in the sequels, and then the studios said, no, you can't be having more than our main star, Robert Downey Jr., so you back off. And then he was like, no, you can't tell me to do this. So they fired him, and then in all subsequent films, James Rhodes is played by Don Cheadle. And I think Don Cheadle probably is the better actor to play the character, to be honest. I'm not taking anything away from Terrence or anything like that. But I think that as far as James Rhodes goes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Don Cheadle plays the character better. He's more relatable, probably because he's been in all the other films, whereas this is the only one we can really go off with Terrence in this role. We also have our main baddie of the film, who is played by the legend that is Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is such an amazing actor. He's so underrated. Here he plays our bad guy, who becomes Ironmonger at the end of the film, and he's a good equal to play off Tony Stark, because his character, whose name escapes me right now, I don't know why. Oh yeah, it's Obadiah. Yeah, he is sort of like an equal. He worked with Tony's father before Tony's father died, and he's quite smart as well. He's quite inventive, but Tony Stark has always been the better inventor, because you should see his house. His house is so full of these inventions. Plus he's got all these trendy cars and everything. He's got all these little machines all over the place. And he designs a capsule for his chest to keep him alive, because that is essentially what is keeping him alive. And there's like a load of wiring and stuff. It's quite a little bit icky. We see a little bit of that between him and Pepper Potts, when he asks Pepper Potts, his assistant, to take all the stuff out, and it's like all full of pus. It's quite disgusting. So I guess it's pretty well done for the film. It is at this point when Tony decides, right, fuck this, I'm not going to make any weapons anymore, I'm not going to sell them anywhere to the Middle East or anything like that, because terrorists are taking these weapons. It's kind of relatable in the real world, if you know what I'm saying. The best scenes about this film are when we finally see Tony Stark in the Iron Man armour. He's getting to grips with all this new technology that he's developed. I really like the scenes when he's actually designing all the armour, and he's taking away a few of the designs and things like that, basically. And he's making all these prototypes. I think by the end of the film he's made quite a few of these suits. I can't remember how many there is. It might be 5, because he makes a silver one, and then he decides to give it some different colours like gold and red, which is the more recognisable colours for Iron Man. So I think overall that is one of the best things about this film, just seeing Tony get to grips with this new armour, learning how to control things, like learning how to fly it, learning how to integrate all these computer systems, like Jarvis, played by James Spader, into this as well, so it can actually talk to him. And some of the best stuff is actually just seeing him fly around. And then one of the best things about this film is when he actually goes back to the Middle East to take on the terrorists who imprisoned him at the start of the film. And it's just so awesome. He blows everything up, and it's just that shot of Iron Man walking away from the explosion. You thought, yeah, this guy is a badass. It really works, and I think it's a really effective part of the film. And to me, it was at that point I thought, yeah, Iron Man is now one of my favourite superheroes as far as all these movies go. Towards the end of the film, we find out that Obadiah has been secretly trading using Tony Stark's industries, and he's actually been negotiating with the bad guy. And it is alluded to that he actually talked to these bad guys before Tony was captured. So at some point before this film started, he went there and he said, right, I want you to capture Tony. Because he's basically jealous of Tony and everything like that. Because Tony's got all easy, he's got the easy life, he's a playboy type of character. You know, he has all these women who he goes out with on one night stands and all of that. There's even a news reporter who he goes on a one night stand with during the events of this film. And he's like, nah, I'm not having any of that. Right, I want to sort Tony out. So he sort of organises his capturing, which is a little bit sick. If you're pretty jealous of him, why don't you just ask Tony, look, can I just not have some more shares of the company? But again, if he didn't do that, then we wouldn't have a story to tell in this film. So as far as villains go, Obadiah is actually a pretty heartless bastard, to be honest. He doesn't really care about Tony in the slightest. I mean, he says he does, but in actual facts, he wants him dead. He doesn't care. He wants to make his own profits. And he's doing all this stuff behind Tony's back. He's selling all these weapons to the bad guys again. He's just a total nutcase. We even see how desperate he is towards the end of the film. He's asking all his co-workers to make him a new suit. And he even says, if Tony Stark could do this with his bare hands in the middle of a cave in the middle of nowhere, then why can't they, when they've got all the technology they've got in the world, like all the best technology? I mean, it's Stark Industries. It's like the best thing going right now. And with that, they make the massive suit, which is known to many comic book nerds as the Ironmonger suit. It's kind of like the bigger version of the Iron Man Mark I suit. And this thing is a beast. Oh my god, it can do everything. It can do all sorts. It can fly. It's got all of these weapons. You name it. Emperor Palpatine fell down a great big hole in Star Wars. Also in Star Wars, Phasma falls down a great big hole. Also in Star Wars, Boba Fett falls down into a Sarlacc pit. It's not a hole, but still, he falls into something. It's kind of like the villain's way of going out, really. They always have to fall down and meet their death. But the guy deserved it, because he was a bit of an arsehole, to be honest with you. Good riddance. After he dies, we get that brilliant scene at the end of the film. People are reporting, like, who is this Iron Man who's been sighted and everything like that. He's been sighted by the army. Rose knows who he is, and Pepper Potts knows who he is. And then Tony Stark confirms that he is Iron Man, and that is the end of the film. And then we get some more awesome music by AC/DC, which I would use in this video, but I probably would get copyrighted. So I'm just going to do this instead. I am Iron Man. Sorry. So overall, what do I think of this film? Well, when this first came out back in 2008, I really enjoyed it. Before this film even existed, I didn't even know about Iron Man. I didn't even know anything about the character. I didn't know his name, anything like that. Didn't know a single thing about it. However, I did know about Robert Downey Jr. and for the most part I liked him as an actor. I thought that all the films that he had been in to that point were really good. He was really good anyway. And when it came to him playing Iron Man, his career just really took off. It revived his career because, if some of you don't know, his career was kind of on a downward spiral before he took on this role. But I can happily say that this film, it really did everything. Everything went in the right direction for him as an actor after this film came out. He did all of the sequels that followed, as well as all of the other Marvel Cinematic films like the Avengers, things like that. So for him, it's turned out to be really good, and now he's one of the highest paid stars on the planet. And it is all thanks to this film. This is the film that started off pretty much a lot of things. It revived Robert Downey Jr.'s career. It also started off this massive universe, which is now even stronger than ever, 10 years on. The character of Tony Stark is one of my favourite comic book characters to ever appear on screen. He's likeable, he's an arsehole, but again, I really like him as a character, and his heart is in the right place. He knows for the good of the people. He knows that all the weapons are a bad thing, which is why he chooses to change his ways, decides, no, I don't want to sell these anymore. I now want to be this superhero. And yes, he is very egocentric, because most of the time a lot of superheroes keep their identity a secret, such as Spider-Man or Batman or Clark Kent as Superman. But here, Tony Stark decides, no, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to go out, I'm going to go and announce to the whole world that I am Iron Man. And that ending, it really pays off. It's a really good way to end the film. It's a great way to set up all the other Iron Man films that followed, as well as set up the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Speaking of setting up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what we tend to get a lot in these films are post-credit scenes, and in the post-credit scenes for this film, we get a scene between Nick Fury and Tony Stark. Nick Fury talks about the Avengers, I'm starting up this team, I want you to be a part of it. And he's played by Samuel L. Jackson, the legend. Standing on its own, this film is a really good one. It's, again, as I said before, it's got a great cast. It has got some good special effects, even though they may have aged quite a bit since 2008, but I think for the time they were pretty damn good. For a superhero that wasn't known to me anyway, this really ticked up all the boxes, and this started off something which Marvel films are still continuing to do. They're taking all these lesser known heroes, let's say, and they're just making them into these massive hits. And it goes to show with this is where it all started. Usually when I think of Marvel, the first superhero I think of before this was Spider-Man. But now I tend to think of all of the main ones from this cinematic universe. So we have Iron Man, we have Captain America, who really became a popular character, especially after his first film came out. We've got Hulk, who was always a popular character anyway, and then we got all of the other ones like Black Widow, Hawkeye, Thor, all of them. This film has also got a great one-off villain. I wouldn't say he is the all-time best villain that Marvel have ever done on film, but for a first villain for this series, I think it works very well, and I don't think they could have chose a better actor to play the villain in Jeff Bridges, because Jeff Bridges is such an amazing actor, so underrated. And I think the rest of the cast do an amazing job. As I said earlier, Terrence does a good job as James Rhodes. Unfortunately, we don't get to see him as War Machine, but it is alluded to that we will get to see him as War Machine, and we do get to see him as War Machine, but by that point, the character is played by Don Cheadle. And Gwyneth Paltrow, she plays a good supporting role as Pepper Potts. But yeah, the main highlight for this film, for me anyway, is Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark. If his character gets retired in the future, then he will be very, very tough to replace. Bit like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, because I can only see him as Wolverine at the minute. So that is my film review, guys, of Iron Man. I hope you enjoyed it, despite the little penguin thing that is at the bottom of the screen. I don't know why that's there, to be honest, but who cares? Overall, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I think that as far as superhero films go, this is actually one of my favourites, believe it or not, and I would highly recommend that you check it out, as this is a really good way to go, and it's a great way to start off the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. You can find the link in the description below and all of that. Stay tuned for more Marvel Cinematic Universe reviews by me, and until next time, cheerio. I'm on a highway to hell. Highway to hell. Oh, it's this way. Yeah, I went the wrong way. Hell, highway to hell.